Okay, so like I said, thanks for everyone for joining. Looks like we got a few people on the line now, so we'll go ahead and start on time. So like I said, my name is Chuck Losh. I'm a solutions architect at Trend. Just a little background on myself. I've worked as a sales engineer for the past year, working with folks like yourself, setting up best practices, going through proof of concepts for deep security. I was a deep security customer as well prior to working at Trend Micro. So, fell in love with the product when I actually was a customer. And it's really great opportunity for working for the company to help customers like yourself every day. So to keep you engaged with this presentation, so it's not just all me talking with PowerPoint, I like to throw a couple poll questions to get started. So this is interactive in your webinar screen where you can answer these questions. This will not only help my presentation, but also help us as well as we tailor more presentations or webinars to have a more tailored approach, right? So if you could be so kind to go ahead and answer this first question to get started, is like, where are most of your servers hosted? This solution we're going to talk about today is built for hybrid cloud. So if you've got a few physical servers running in your wiring closet or at a few data centers across the country or some colos, that might be your option that you're deploying for today. If you're experimenting or currently have VMware as a virtualization stack, we'd like to know about that. And then also, since this is built for hybrid cloud, if you're starting to experiment with public cloud services, Azure, AWS, and GCP, all three of these public cloud service providers are supported with our product, as you'll see today. So you can have one single pane of glass to add all of your workloads in one spot. So just go ahead and hit the submit button when you're ready, and then we'll go ahead and advance the slide here to kind of see those results. And thank you, appreciate that. Okay, I think that's enough time just to get some results there. So we'll go ahead and check our polls. So yeah, this is interesting. So it looks like the makeup of the folks that are on the call today, 20% on-prem. That's very normal. Used to run into that myself as a customer of Trend Micro Deep Security, and also working with customers, and a lot of VMware. That's good. And then right now, it looks like nobody in utilizing public cloud. That may change in your environment. And I think that's the beauty of the solution with deep security, was what you're getting is future proofing, right? So if you decide to venture out and use those public cloud service providers, you can add those accounts in and easily have one place to see all those workloads protected. Okay. One other question is for folks that are on the phone, I can definitely relate to this as working as an engineer, is what percentage of your server deployment has security software installed? A lot of times we run into environments saying, hey, I'm kind of adverse to that, or taking on something new or installing that, performance and things like that. And then also sometimes, I know for myself, when I would change jobs or work for another organization, this might have been put in my lap to actually deploy a cybersecurity solution or other software. So I don't really know right now because I don't really have the visibility what's covered and what's not. So if you would go ahead and answer that, we would certainly appreciate it. Okay, I think that's enough time there for some poll results, so we'll go ahead and advance the slide. So it looks like about 75% of the folks have got security software installed. That's great. That's what we like to see, is that's a good high percentage. And then, the other half of the spectrum is about 25%. So that's interesting. I mean, those type of statistics help us to understand, some of the reasons why folks may be adverse to going all in when it comes to security, even though we should do that in everything that we do. It should be part of our process. Very cool. So let's go ahead and do a little bit of slide work here, just talking about our offering. So what you have purchased in the past, deep security software, or you're a new customer with deep security, but maybe you haven't deployed yet, it is your workload security, right? So what we're going to cover today is basically the on-premise installation. So I think that equates to what folks are exposed to on the phone. If I've got a data center, either on-prem or a wiring closet at my location, or multiple data centers spread out across the country, you would install this software in that environment to protect those workloads, right? And then if you also can deploy the solution inside AWS, inside Microsoft Azure, and Google Cloud. So if you're wanting to have the Deep Security Manager run inside your cloud platform, you certainly can do that. So that is what we call our deep security software in a nutshell. It's built for those EC2 instances, those Azure VMs, VMware virtual machines, and then your physical machines all in one place. We also have some offerings made up of that conglomerate with deep security software. If you start venturing out and doing things in containers with container image security, a lot of folks are starting to do that. They're kind of, hey, can we do this on a server, but maybe we can slice and dice this up, extrapolate that into different container farms, so we can protect those container images and scan them, making sure there's no vulnerabilities, malware, things that you don't want in your production application. And certain things like file storage security, we can bring that into play as well. When you start venturing to cloud, what we're covering today is your deep security software investment, but we also have, you might have been on our website lately, Cloud One. So that is the SaaS-based version of deep security. So you can run it in our deployment options completely hosted by us in a SaaS offering. So we host the infrastructure for you. You deploy the agent, and then it calls home to a SaaS console. With that SaaS offering, we've got a lot of other solutions built for cloud builders. So in the future, if you start doing things full-on cloud or cloud native, or looking for to design a center of cloud excellence or cloud security posture management in AWS or Azure, we've got a myriad of services there to help you. So Deep Security 20. So really excited about Deep Security 20. That is available today. If you were going to deploy this tomorrow or start trying to do this yourself, it was just released at the end of the month. So we've got a lot of new features with usability, security, and compatibility. This is an overall summary of those feature sets. Not only is this applied to cloud-based workloads, since this is hybrid cloud with AWS and Google new additions, but also some improvements in the VMware world. You can run this solution what's called agentlessly. I'm not sure if anyone has been exposed to that on the call, but you can run our product without an agent. It does require some components from VMware to stand up regarding NSX. That's kind of the secret sauce behind that, and we'll cover a little bit of that today. I said, if you have any questions during today's presentation, we have some engineers standing by that you can interact with and post those questions to chat. At the time remaining today, we'll take a couple of those that we think are relevant for the group and answer those. So feel free to interact with us during the presentation if that's something you had a specific question on. Okay, so with usability, we have added additional features to Google Cloud Platform. You can add your Google Cloud account directly to it. You can organize your resources by project. So folks that are starting to use Google Cloud Platform are seeing that take more hold in the public cloud space. You can do things not only with Google Cloud, but other in AWS and Azure, doing tagging, things like that to apply policies. So we can see those tags from the instance metadata and apply policy there. So that's a neat addition that we've added. We've done this. There's a great link on our webinar here. We've got a lot of great links that's for you to download, some PDF best practices guides. But one place I would invite you, whether you're not using public cloud services today, but even on-prem, is we do have the Deep Security Automation Center. So you can interact with our product completely headless or programmatically. Not a lot of customers I talk to know about that, but there are some customers that are trying to build infrastructure automation or infrastructure as code. So these types of things you can leverage and use, and that's on our Deep Security Automation Center. So we've had additional RESTful APIs there for AWS and Google. This is a good one I like to point out to customers is when you're doing your upgrades, right? So, there's several situations where the Windows Server require a reboot for the agent to complete their upgrade. We've now removed that from the product. So the need for the reboot has been completely removed. So that allows you to upgrade without impact to the system. So when I would work with customers before and they're a Windows shop, and I could definitely relate to that, I was like, okay, yep, you want to do your upgrades probably during a maintenance window when you're doing your patching, and maintenance makes sense, right? So now, but we've removed that upgrade. So we can have a round of applause for that. I'm sure that makes a lot of folks happy that are on this call. I know myself, so very cool. And then we've added some additional recommendations for anti-malware issues. So sometimes when you implement a new security solution, it can be daunting, right? It's like, what is this telling me? The alerts that come in, do I need like a dictionary to look up these error codes, calling for support and things like that. So we've added additional actionable recommendations to anti-malware issues to give them more details of the reason for the failure. And then you can even cancel that from here as well. So you have more control there. And these additional enhancements, they've been added added to pass that that metadata in the log files to, like, if you're using SIEM or SIEM tools, or like Azure Sentinel or Splunk, or using AWS SNS, which is becoming quite popular, to send those log events to SNS and maybe trigger different events, like maybe open up a help desk ticket in Jira, or create a PagerDuty alert or something like that for your administrators if this happens. So pretty cool. We've got some additional recommendations there, and that same, what was added is now you're able to stream that in those logs for log ingestion. Speaking of upgrades, we've added some additional features for controlling, giving customers more ability to control which agents get deployed for version control. So you can, we've got great Linux support and Windows support, so you can pull by OS here and say, hey, I want to run and maybe keep everything at this particular version of the agent, or maybe run latest LTS. So you have more capabilities there to control your agent activations. Also, with your deployment script, so if you're doing things like in an infrastructure as code, or maybe baking our agent inside a virtual machine, so you're making sure that the agent, that's good best practice right there, making sure that, hey, the security is not an afterthought. You can have it automatically now activate and upgrade to the latest version. So even if maybe you built this golden image a while ago, you're not having to go back into the image and go, oh, okay, I need to extrapolate that image, run the new agent, and then republish. You can keep that same agent, and then when it activates, it will go ahead and auto upgrade to the version that you specify here. So that's some pretty cool features as well. And then that's what I just basically talked about here, is you're staying up to date by automating the upgrade of your agent environment. So folks that are doing that, we see that in people that are building golden images or using infrastructure as code or Packer and things like that, that they don't have to go back in and change the agent out. We've added additional account information for usage billing. This will be applicable to folks that if you start venturing in AWS, Azure, GCP, as we're adding the AWS account ID, subscription, and project ID. This will give you additional information for billing purposes. This is more in the per hour billing models that you can subscribe to through Marketplace, where you're saying, hey, we see that in DevOps communities where I'm provisioning some VMs behind a load balancer for an application, scaling up and scaling down quite a bit throughout the day. And I want to only pay for, per instance hour for the security software, because with a mutable architecture, that could be spun down and thrown away. I'm no longer protecting that VM. So that's what we've done here, is added improvements to say, hey, these VMs belong to these AWS accounts and subscription IDs in Azure and GCP. This will help for just so you know where your usage is for billing and what departments are spinning up and spinning down workloads for things like that. We've also added, since you can tie in your AWS account, just like GCP and Azure, to the console, is one feature based on feedback from customers is like, hey, if I don't have stuff running in regions, like I don't really need to have that displayed, because when you add your account, you can see every single region in the world. But if I don't have stuff running, in Europe, I just have everything running in US, let's go ahead and auto hide that for me. Now, at any time, you can toggle the switch and add it back if you want to, but if there's nothing in there, it just helps, cut down on, things that you need to look at from a systems administrator, which is pretty cool. And then improve security and compatibility. When we talk about on-prem, we've added additional capabilities for NSXT. You can run the product with NSXV or T support, but now with NSXT agentless support, it was anti-malware only, but now you can do integrity monitoring on Windows and IPS firewall and web reputation. So we've added additional technology there with an NXT deployment. Also, you can do multiple vCenter servers. So the nice thing about this product is you can add your vCenter server to the product. So now with NSXT, you can add multiple vCenter servers. We've done some improvements on time to auto-activate based on the virtual appliance. So in an agentless config, from a nutshell, that's how that works, is each and every host in your environment is going to have a virtual appliance installed. And that virtual appliance is going to be connected to NSX, and then some guest introspecting drivers are loaded to your virtual machines to not require the agent to be installed, right? So that's how that works. So there's a little more architecture be involved there, just versioning of ESXi and versions of NSX, just to make sure everything is compliant, and then right-sizing that appliance. But we've made some improvements there with compatibility with NSX 3.0, and then there's been also that intrusion prevention, anti-malware, and it's more compatible also with vMotion as well. So those are some really cool features. You also can expand our compatibility with vCloud Director. So if you're leveraging that, you can use that. And then also we've backported that. This was just told to me that that's been backported to version 12, update 7 or later. So that's pretty cool. And then with our Linux platforms, we've got great Linux support. I'm going to show you a couple sites today that I love to talk to customers about. Showing our expanded OS support here is we are now supporting CentOS 8, Oracle Linux 8, Cloud Linux 8, Debian 10, and I thought this was really cool, Ubuntu 20.04. So those are now supported now. So it doesn't matter if you're deploying those on-prem or inside the public cloud environment, but they are supported. So, and we have great kernel support as well. There's a site I'm going to show you all on the phone today is on average between, the folks at Trend tell me anywhere from 48 hours is when supportability is there, but I see it when I go out there and tell customers like every 24 hours it refreshes. So if you're really bleeding edge and getting latest builds from kernels, we've got great Linux support where we've got a good tie-in there to make sure that our agent is supported on those new Linux kernels. Not as much in the Windows world because the kernel doesn't change obviously as much, but definitely in the Linux world there. Yeah, speaking of Linux, right, or platform support with Deep Security Manager, traditionally when I would talk to customers in the past, and it's probably predominantly the same as, hey, put it on a Windows server, Windows SQL Server as well for a database, but we've added additional options for support for operating systems. So you can even run Deep Security Manager on Linux itself. Red Hat 8 is supported, and then one add for Deep Security 20 is now supported on Server 2019. For both the manager and then also the corresponding database, the SQL Server as well. And we've added for database support, you can run Postgres database as well. If you want to make sure we're compatible with costs and your overall business line, bottom line initiatives there. And you can even run them in PaaS services like in Amazon RDS and Aurora. And if you're starting to do things in Azure SQL database is supported as well. So pretty cool. This was kind of covered in the billing option. Amazon has made updates to its metadata service version 2. We still are compatible with version 1 if you're still running some older virtual machines in AWS. But with version 2 of the IMDS, basically that's querying the metadata service, like the specs of the machine. It helps us give more accurate billing for that. So when you are spinning up machines, if it's in M4 large or C5 or something like that, we're able to detect those newer families as they come out to give you more accurate metered billing for that per hour billing. That's what that's for. Oh, had a little bit of slide trouble here. Sorry about that. So we're at the end of the slide deck. I just had one more question to ask before we get into the interactive. So thanks for staying with me, going through the new added features. I hope that that added some value there just to know what's coming in our roadmap, what's released today. We're really proud of this recent release with Deep Security 20. So if you're doing a new deployment today, it is available. That's the latest and greatest. If you're running 11 or 12 or an older version, you might want to think about upgrading to 20. I'd say just for the Windows reboot requirement alone, for sure. So I was very pleased to see that. So with this poll question here, this is relevant because I'm going to take you all on the phone just through a deployment process and best practices with the software itself live today. But I can definitely relate this from a personal perspective. Like, if you feel adverse to security software deployment, what are those reasons why, right? When I worked in IT departments, it's, you could be, 1 or 2 systems administrators. Maybe you're understaffed. Hey, I've got other things going on right now. Security tends to be an afterthought. I do it because I'm the only one that can actually do it in my organization. Am I worried about performance? We kind of hit that early on when we're talking about how much, in your deployment status, how many of your servers are fully deployed. Sometimes folks are resistant to that. Like, hey, I don't really want to put an AV agent on there because I'm worried about performance. So that's a common thing that we hear. Skill sets needed. Hey, I'm not a security person. I need help, right? And that's kind of where we tie in. Where we have some resources today in this quick start to basically take you through a deployment today to get you more comfortable with the software. But we have resources here that I'm going to put you in touch with at the end of the call with our customer experience team. And that's what they're here for, is to help you do a guided deployment, to help you get off the ground and help you get this actually installed and working in your environment. And then, always at the bottom, right? Definitely with everything going on with COVID right now in the country, you may be just worried about keeping the lights on, right? So we've got other business priorities right now, getting product out the door and things like that. So, security is right now, it's unfortunately is an afterthought to it. So we just kind of want to keep a barometer there of where you're at. So thank you so much for that question and Q&A. We'll take a look. Yep, this is very interesting. A lot of the times it's these two that I see. It's worried about performance, right? And with deep security, which we'll cover today, is 7 different modules to protect you. And you have total customizability to turn off and turn on what makes sense for your business. A lot of folks come to us for the name of Trend Micro. I'm looking for AV. I got to check the box. I'm going through an audit and things like that. I used to be under PCI and things like that. Okay, yeah. But we've got a lot of other features under the hood to protect those workloads. And you can turn those off and have full customization in how they perform. And skill set. Yeah, I think skill set is definitely important because you do need somebody that understands security to a degree to make those policy decisions. And I think that's where we can come to play as your advocate and your guide and working with our customer success team is provide that, skill set that you may be lacking is all about education. I'm a big proponent on that, is educating you to tailor the software to meet your needs, to check compliance needs. We can help you there. Okay, so actually, this should be at the end. But if you want to go ahead and do that, wait till I do my, I think we got a little bit of slide jumble there, but this should actually be after the demonstration today. But if you feel free to answer it now based on what you've seen so far, and then we're going to actually go through a deployment today. Hey, I feel equipped I want to go ahead and do that. We can get you the resources to help, or hey, I need more assistance there. We'll go ahead and flip the slide. Let's see. Yeah, nobody answered there. That's totally fine. So we want to make sure. I'll flip back to that slide and let you answer it at the end. So what we'll do is we're going to go ahead and do some screen sharing here. Okay, so I'll go one more slide. Looks like, yeah, need more assistance. Thanks for whoever voted on that. I appreciate that. So let's go through the screen sharing. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And I'm just going to make sure that is working. And coming through. A moment here. And get pulled over here. So in this environment, I've got 3 machines here, okay? And what we're basically doing today, this is our best practices guide that we are, it looks like everything's coming with screen sharing now. It looks like I had to catch up there, so I apologize. So I've got 3 virtual machines running in Azure right now. One is my Deep Security Manager or Node. One is my Microsoft SQL Server database, which is also acting as a relay. Okay. And then we have a test virtual machine that we're going to deploy the security software to, and then go through a best practices policy. So this is what kind of out of the box our standard, we call a small scale deployment. So in that reference guide in the webinar, you can download this guide. This is a great guide. It's from our help center. We're going to cover a few breakout links in here of things that I always talk to customers about that you need to be aware of. And then we're also going to show you our customer success portal, where you can sign up for a customer support account. That way you can get into knowledge base articles, create support tickets. There's a whole bunch of resources there available for you through that customer success portal as well. So there's 2 places you're going to want to go, the help center and then the customer success portal. So those links are in the side guide there in the webinar. So go ahead and feel free to click through those. But this is a sample deployment. From a best practices standpoint, you probably want at some point a secondary node. Just for redundancy, you can have multiple deep security nodes. So those are, think of in an architectural diagram, those are the brains, right? So all of your agents that are installed on your virtual machines are going to call home to those deep security manager nodes. And then you have a centralized repository, the database server. And that database server is going to keep all your configuration information for your policies, your logs and alerts. Everything is going to be saved and logged in that database server. And you also can, hook that, if you're doing, long-term retention, you can, it's an optional component when we go into our architectural diagram, but if you want to send that to a Splunk system, Logarithm, I used to use that myself, or any of those type of flavors, or Azure Sentinel, for example, you certainly can do that. So this is our deep security architecture. Let's go ahead and, before we start, I like to just kind of go through the system requirements briefly with you. So this is our Deep Security Help Center guide. This will help you whether you're going to install via agents or if you're going to take advantage of the NSX deployment. So everything is here for you as far as the requirements, your base requirements, and then we also have some great sizing information out here as well. That's always to me, that was always the tough problem about getting something off the ground is like, how do I size this appropriately? And, a lot of times you have to bring in consultants, and we're definitely here for you to help you for customer success. But this is a good place to start. So if we go to the Deep Security Manager, we list the system requirements here. Disk space, standard stuff, right? We've got that expanded OS offerings now, so you can run the actual manager on Linux OSs, and also 2019 has just been added. And then we've got our database requirements. So we've really expanded here in the database realm to have a lot of different offerings for you for that database. Even Oracle RAC, which I think that's pretty cool. I used to actually run that. But yeah, one thing, a lot of times customers I run into just is to provide value for you is like, hey, I want to kind of try this out or kick the tires. I don't really want to burn a SQL license. Can I run Express? You can do that, but it's supported in a very limited deployment. So just be mindful of that because you have those hard caps from Microsoft of the database size. And once you hit that, the database fills up. So, and you can only support, a very few amount of VMs. So we definitely discourage that. But I do run that when I work with customers all the time. It's like, hey, I just want to try this out on Express first before I migrate to a production database. So you certainly can do that. So get asked that a lot. And then as far as this manager sizing, well, if we click this link here, this is how we can help you stand up those nodes, right? So if you know that the number, this is kind of the math problem. If you know that this is where you currently sit today, and by agents we mean virtual machines, because that's the agent sits on the virtual machine, right? So these are your systems requirements, and then we recommend for manager nodes for load balancing. We definitely have customers that run, one manager node, because they just have, one server in their environment, and maybe they have a wiring closet in the back, and that's what they have, right? One thing I'll caution on that is that if you do have that kind of situation going on, a lot of times I talk to customers like, oh, this is kind of a multi-purpose app server. Can I just put your product on there? Like, you want to have a dedicated box for this because, or virtual machine, because you could have ports being overlapped and things like that. And I'm sure the support folks on the phone can appreciate that because sometimes if you get on the phone call and there's a lot of things going on. I was working with a customer not too long ago, their backup server was their Deep Security Manager server. And, sometimes you can have some conflicts there. So it's best to kind of keep everything clean and for that particular purpose, right? But yeah, so you can see your manager sizing here. And then also multiple server nodes are supported. And then the database sizing is the same thing. The number of protected computers, right, that you're going to have in your environment. And then we've got a nice tablature format here, basically breaking it down for you. Like how many agents am I looking to protect? And then these are the 7 different modules that we're going to cover today. Okay, and how much on average that equates to, and what we recommend for best practices that you allocate for table space there. So that's where you want to probably stay away from, like I said before, that Express database, because there's hard caps that go, it's 10 or 15 gigs of that total, Express database. So it's you definitely would not want to use that long term. But yeah, this gives you the information you need as far as sizing if you're running an agent-based deployment. And then also, if you are running VMware and you have the software requirements, the version of ESXi, and you're licensed for NSX, and we list all those requirements here for the NSX version requirements, your ESXi host requirements. So this varies also by the virtual appliance sizing. So what we do with that guide to help you all out on the phone is we provide those OVFs for you to download. I actually have the download center open here. We'll cover that here in just a second. But we have the OVFs out here for you to consume, right? And we tell you that right here is saying, hey, this OVF is our base one, small, medium, or large, and what those components are. So this virtual appliance will sit on your host. Okay, so it's going to consume these resources on the host. You want to make sure that your host ESXi version is this or higher, and your virtual hardware version is that or higher. And then which types are supported, NSXV or T, and then your maximum amount of protected VMs that appliance can hold. So that helps a lot of, obviously you can work with us and we'll go through that for you for customer success, but this is a nice guide to have there. Lastly, as far as the sizing and system requirements, we'll talk about the actual endpoint or the agent itself. So this is the server that you're going to put it on. If we go to that, so if we go to the agent sizing, okay, so with all protection modules turned on, like all 7 modules. Let's say you got a Windows 2016 server. These are our recommended system requirements that you should have, okay? And then the vice versa for Linux there. So that way you know everything, all your components for sizing and everything like that. The last thing I like to point out before we get into the actual software itself is this is a big time saver for you. So when I work with customers a lot on the phone, it's networking, right? You want to make sure you have this guide available. Now, don't be shying away from it. There's a lot going on here, and this is making assumptions that you may have other trend products in your spectrum, right? As you can see here with our Deep Discovery Analyzer and our endpoint products, Apex and things like that. And some customers, maybe you're not even running Active Directory, or you're not running SQL, or you're running Postgres. So we have everything kind of a la carte here on one diagram, but these are the ports and protocols that need to be open. So if you have some network admins on the phone, or if this makes it easier to have that conversation across the aisle, saying, hey, these are the things that I need open for the solution to work from a ports and protocols. So you can lock that down to certain IPs as this port, in this port, source destination port rules, or even if you have a next-gen perimeter firewall in place, so those URLs. Okay, so we also break this out by mandatory and optional. Like optional would be, as an example, maybe you're not running SIEM or syslog. You don't have that long-term retention requirement in your environment. So that's going to show up as an optional port, right? So that shows up under optional section here. But the other ones that are mandatory, you're going to want to make sure those are punched. And we also tell you the protocol and what they're actually doing. That's the thing too, is like, what is this actually doing? So you have all that information for you. As far as URLs too, those are listed on here as well. So that really comes into play in an on-prem installation. Your agents are talking, and your appliances are talking to your Deep Security Manager nodes in your local environment. But your Deep Security Manager will need to reach out to the internet to get updates from Trend, right? Not only like our anti-malware updates, but also security and patches for the manager software itself. So you want to make sure if you've got a next-gen firewall upstream that those URLs are whitelisted, so you can pass that off if maybe somebody's got an upstream Fortinet or a Palo or something like that. You have all that at your disposal. This helps cut down on your deployment time if you have this trying to arm you today with things to help. So you're not in that situation. You get an error code, and it's like, what does this mean? Why can't this talk? And you get that port refused, or you get that error code. At least you know when you're in the diagram what you need to have open here. This will be a big time saver for you. Okay, so where we download the software to start is this page here. This is in your documentation guide. We already covered the what's new. The supported features by platform, if you've got management on the phone, CISOs on the phone that's saying, hey, I'm trying to meet, does this do this? Does this meet that? Do you have file integrity monitoring? What OSs are supported and things like that? That is all covered in our supported features by platform. So you can pull up any OS here, and we have a nice grid that's basically showing the OS, the feature sets across those 7 modules, and checking the box. So this will allow you to have that. It helps ease that conversation of knowing what you're getting in the product, what's supported and what's not there. And then speaking of the Linux kernels, I always like to show that to customer. I hinted that early on. This is a great guide. This is updated, like I said, it probably is updated today. It is on cue there, is that these are your supported Linux kernels, right? So you can go right in here and say, hey, I'm running RHEL, and we're kind of latest and greatest. Like, are you, that's obviously 32-bit, but you can go in and see if that particular kernel that you're running is supported or not. So this is an easy way to find out, rather than calling support or trying to figure out if this, this kernel is supported. If you're thinking about upgrading and running those yum updates or apt-get updates and updating the kernel or switching versions, right away if that's supported or not. And like I said, that's updated. Usually I see most times on a nightly basis, but it's been told me about, give it a 48-hour window there. But yep, so that's some good stuff for you there. And where you download the software, what we've done today is we've went ahead and this is where we're going to download everything. You can download the manager from here, latest and greatest version. You can see that's when it was released on July 30th when we went live with Deep Security 20. So you can download this. You can also download the agents software here directly. What I'm going to show you today, we have customers do this all the time. I want to download this agent. I want to go ahead and bake it in an image. we actually have a technology called a deployment script that helps a lot of customers when you're trying to make sure that the agent is installed everywhere quickly and easily. We recommend doing that method, but it's still here for you to download your agents for those specific OSs, as you can see here. And then here's also those deep security appliances for running VMware and then running in a agentless capacity, right? So cool, we covered a lot of ground there. Let's go ahead and go on my environment. So I've got 3 VMs here. This is just a SQL server that I've spun up, okay? So it's running 2019. I went in here and just created if I can click, clicked a database. Now, if this is a shared SQL instance, we recommend from best practices naming this something that someone's not going to delete, right? You want to maybe make this, call it deep security, do not delete, or DSM is the common one if I set this up for a new customer that I'm working with. So just set up a new database in your database server. You want to go ahead under the security section and create a login for that. You can use Windows logins, or Active Directory logins. That's totally fine. We have customers doing that all the time. A lot of times from best practices, though, I do recommend you may want to think about using a local SQL account with the permissions just to that database, just for security purposes. And then also, if you have an issue with Active Directory in your environment, that way you're not relying on that component, right? It's all trying to plan for redundancy and things like that. So if you're using local SQL auth for that, to that specific database, that's what normally I recommend to customers too when I set them up. And so we've got that database provisioned right on my SQL server. We don't really need the SQL server anymore, so we'll go ahead and minimize that guy. Just wanted to show you that for illustrative purposes. We're going to go out to the Deep Security Manager server. Okay, so previously, so we're not watching progress bars. I went ahead and ran the installation, just to say in the interest of time. But when you run the installation, actually I'll pull it up on another VM here, just a guest VM. This is what it looks like in a nutshell. It comes up with the Deep Security Manager setup wizard. In our best practices guide, the color screens for each step are illustrated for you, but it's going to do a couple of things. Obviously, you got to set the EULA, right? Standard stuff. It's going to check if you got a previous version of Deep Security Manager on this. That's pretty cool. If you want to do an upgrade, if you're on version, say on version 12 and want to go to 20, we can look for that for you on your nodes. This is your installation path, standard stuff. It's going to want to connect to the database. In this case, you want to go ahead and put in those credentials, right? So that's the next step. If I go ahead and put that in here, go ahead and do that. Hopefully I don't mess up my password today. Wait for that. And in this case, since I've already deployed the software, basically a couple steps, it's asking, the next step would be asking for your license key. Basically, it helps if I, it helps if I put in the right database name, right? So if we do, sorry about that, DS, not the VM itself, DS Manager 20, SQL. That should be the right. And those are type of error codes you're going to get, right? So we want to make sure, and if hopefully I type in my password, this is stuff, good things that engineers always deal with, right? Passwords and things like that. Well, hopes if I type it right here. There we go. So the third time's a charm, right, folks? So, passwords, got to love them. So in this case, I already have Deep Security ran on my other node. So this is the process if you want to add an additional manager node. So that's pretty cool. Is if you start out with most customers, I wanted to show you all this on the phone today. Is if you want to start off with that first, for a small deployment, go ahead and add one. Deep Security Manager, hook it to the database. But if I change my mind, I want to add additional manager node, it's really easy to do that. So adding a manager node here. So I wanted to show you that process. Just hit next, and it's going to go ahead and do the installation and add another node to the database. And then you can put both those nodes behind a load balancer. Maybe if you've got an on-prem, load balancer solution through VMware or Kemp or something like that, you can have it go through your existing load balancer there. And then, vice versa in cloud services. You could put in ELB and AWS or a Azure Load Balancer, for example, in ALB. So we'll go ahead and minimize that. This is my Deep Security Manager server that I ran the installation on. One of the things out of the box it has you do is basically create a set of root credentials. Okay. master admin is the default username that you'll get. You can change that if you want it to be root or something else. Oh boy, having trouble with passwords today. Gotta love them. I was already logged into this before we started the call. Oh. Oh my goodness, okay. Oh, caps lock's on. All right. But yeah, you can customize this. And then also what I tell customers all the time is for best practices, you saw that checkbox for multi-factor authentication. You probably want to turn that on for best practices. This is a local account that I've logged into the system. This is basically when you first provision the system, you get that kind of God mode root account, right, to log into the system. You can add other local accounts. You also can do SSO. So if you're using like ADFS, Active Directory, Okta, things like that, you can have those users federated, which is a nice thing to have, so you don't have to go in from an administrative standpoint and just add a bunch of local accounts. You can have create RBAC policies or based on security groups, like if you're using Active Directory saying, hey, Chuck can only go in and manage these computers. He can't go in and modify policies or delete policies. You have a lot of great granularity there for RBAC-based rules. But when you first log into the system, this is kudos, right? So you got here and you are you're deployed by running through the software. Your database communication is good. The system is stood up. So this is your main dashboard for the product. For those of you that have never seen it before. You can add and remove widgets. So kind of back what I was saying with administrators is you can have multiple administrators, multiple cooks in the soup. They can customize what they want to look at across those 7 different modules, right? Anti-malware, web rep, integrity monitoring, log inspection, what have you. They can add and they can drag these around too. You can move these widgets around to, you can see how I can pick them up and you get the space where it was before and drop it to a new location. So that's a pretty cool interface that I like to point out to customers. Right off the bat, where you're going to start is go into computers and policies. So in computers, this is going to be your single pane of glass I was telling you about in the slide deck. This is where you're going to add your computers, like by Active Directory. You can add your VMware vCenter directly to here. You start and talk about future proofing. If you start doing things in public cloud, you can add those accounts here. So you have one pane of glass for all that stuff. I think that is so powerful because a lot of times you have multiple solutions managing things and like, okay, well, this is managing that, and this is managing that. Now you can have everything in one pane of glass to see where these things are at and where your workloads are provisioned, whether they're powered on and off. You get those type of details if they're on or off, and whether they're protected and managed by Trend Micro. You have this little eyeball here. You can actually see at a glance, across those 7 different modules based on policy that I've got everything turned on and configured. You obviously can go into policy and see the details of that, but I have, I can quickly sort by this and see if I've got an auditor in the room or want to dump this out as a report. Yeah, I'm protected. I got all my machines protected. So kind of like we talked about before, those discovery questions, this will help with that. It's like, hey, now I know my security software is everywhere, right? So speaking of policies, okay, so that's where we normally start when you're trying to build a policy to protect your workloads. What I've done here today is talking about best practices to stay in line with the objectives today is think of policies when I talk to customers like GPOs for the folks on the phone that are Windows admins, is you can have kind of one to rule them all, or they're like root level domain policies, and you've got computer group policies, security group, and down to an individual machine, like as far as scoping. That's the same thing we've got here. Kind of equate to, if you're not familiar with GPOs, the same thing with file permissions in Windows, right? You got group level, and then even down to individual files and folders permissions. Same thing, same architecture here. We provide some out of the box for you. Like some base Linux and Windows policies for Windows Desktop and Windows Server. But what I recommend customers do is start from scratch. What I do when I work with a new customer, and I've never worked with them before, and they're testing this out, is go ahead and create a new policy. And I'm not going to inherit from anything. But once I get that best practice policy or blanket policy dialed in for maybe for Windows, right? I create a Windows best practices policy, right? That's what we work with customers from customer success. but I want to inherit that and copy that or clone that to maybe some app servers or SQL servers. But for those servers, I want some additional stuff that are outside the norm, so you can have overrides there. And you can even take it one step further to that individual machine and say, hey, I want, even these on this specific machine. I had a false positive on this machine. I want that in my exceptions from anti-malware. So you can just do that just for that machine because it's just an issue there. It's not really an issue, a global issue. Maybe you don't want to have that spread across the board there. So that's where you normally start, is go ahead and create a inherit from nobody, an actual base policy or root level policy. So think about permissions. And then you name it accordingly and then go ahead and set it up. So I've done that. In this case, we went ahead and set up a trend best practices policy today. Here are your 7 different modules. Okay, you've got anti-malware, you got web reputation, you got application control, integrity monitoring, log inspection, and firewall, intrusion prevention. Wow, that's a lot of stuff, right? So if you purchased the product, maybe you just came to us and said, hey, you know what, I just need anti-malware, I need to check the box there. So what you own, if you just have that module, we break these out into families. If you have anti-malware, you just own anti-malware and web reputation. If network security is your jam, then we have network security is made up of intrusion prevention, which is our host-based IDS, IPS. Love to talk to customers about that. I could talk about it all day, have just a class on that. And then firewall. When you get into system monitoring or system and application monitoring, that's our system application modules for application control, integrity monitoring, and then log inspection. So all these make up a total blended effort to protect those workload machines. So you may not know that this stuff is even here. You might just be doing anti-malware and, hey, I never turned this stuff on. What does that really mean? So that's the objective today, is to go through that. So with anti-malware, from a best practices standpoint, if you've been around anti-malware for a while, this is standard stuff from real-time scan, manual and scheduled scan. You can have multiple scan configurations for your workloads, which is pretty cool. You can name them accordingly. And then from a best practices standpoint, we recommend having everything turned on from a blended threat analysis there. So our document exploit protection is going to be our signature and pattern detection that we're known for. We've got our known pattern files when they get pushed out every 2 hours through our smart protection network when our threat researchers find that. Easy way to counteract a threat. If we've seen it before, we go ahead and shut it down. But we also have aggressive detection of unknown objects as well. Predictive machine learning, you can see from a feature set. Document exploit protection is both Windows and Linux. You can go back to that supported features by platform guide, but you see here the Windows versus Tux icons here. Predictive machine learning, leveraging AI, trying to see if, like we're checking a pattern file, right? The metadata of the file doesn't exactly match the pattern file. Let's go ahead and send this off to AI, to the cloud, the metadata, compare against our machine learning model. Confidence is high. We've got a confidence rating that this is going to be pre-execution and runtime malicious. We can act accordingly there. And the behavior monitoring, that's one of our next-gen technologies. Behavior monitoring is our ransomware protection. That's where we're able to detect things like unauthorized encryption, like dangerous and suspicious behavior, right? So on a ransomware-based attack, might have a word file, a cryptographic process spins out of that, starts encrypting files. We can actually have this checked, and when we work on counteracting that threat, we back up and back up the directory that it's hitting, and you're able to restore those files through the agent. Doesn't go to some cloud backup or anything like that. This is all done on the agent. So I always caveat that, like folks go, oh, cool, I don't have to back the servers up. No, still want to back your servers up, handle that. But this is an added bonus there, that when we're shutting down that malicious ransomware process, is we can help you in restoration there by using the local agent. Lastly, in our threat analysis with anti-malware module is process memory scan. So that allows us to scan your memory for malware, looking for new fileless malware attacks like PowerShell scripts and things like that maybe got loaded from memory from the web and it injects other malicious processes in system RAM, may go out and download malicious files, but it doesn't need a file to act. So those are some new next-gen technologies. Everything can be excluded from a best practices standpoint. If you find something, like I was saying before, that you don't want to be scanned, lists are going to be your friend in the product where you can do that. Web reputation. This is a very useful feature. Not a lot of web surfing going on a server. You may have an admin go on there from the time to time, run some package updates and things like that. Definitely in the Linux world, in most cases they're headless, right? You're just SSHing on there. So the beauty of this product is it's browser agnostic, so you don't have to have some plugin running on your browser on your server, but also it's hooked into the kernel through the agent. So any outbound URL call that's going to a dangerous or highly suspicious site, think phone home servers, command and control, botnets, things like that, we can intercept that and block that. So kind of these technologies across the stack are designed to work together. So kind of back to the ransomware-based attack, ransomware has to call home. It has to call home and say, hey, I need the encryption keys on Chuck's server. This is the public IP address it's going to be assigned to try and collect his money or whatever. So that we're able to detect that malicious URL call and block that accordingly. And just like anything else, you can add exceptions to the rule at a policy level here on the allowed and blocked URLs. Application control. We're getting into the system modules now. This is your change management for the solution. So you can do what's called allow or block. So it's going to allow software, but just log it unless explicitly blocked in the actions pane of the console. You get notified on it. Or I want to run on a full-on restrictive mode where I want to block unrecognized software unless it's explicitly allowed by me or by another administrator. So this is where you have some additional controls. If you got multiple system administrators or cooks in the stoop, you can choose which mode makes sense for you. You can override this with what's called maintenance mode. You can right-click a machine and turn on maintenance mode. So if you are in that full-on restrictive, but maybe, I mean, when I ran the product, I was a sysadmin that worked overnight hours. My time's at 2 o'clock in the morning. Maintenance mode is on. All my changes are checked in. They're still logged, but they're allowed. And then after I'm done with my maintenance mode and toggle it back off, you set back to business as usual. And you actually can set your maintenance mode for a duration too. So if you know you're up for 2 hours or 3 hours, this is a useful feature for those folks working kind of the graveyard shift or doing maintenance for a change management process to help with that, to augment that. We also have file integrity monitoring here, or integrity monitoring, where it uses these three modules I'm going to talk about with integrity monitoring, log inspection, intrusion prevention, use what's called a recommendation scan. And that recommendation scan is going to go ahead, think like anti-malware, your scheduled scans in the environment. It's going to reach out when you determine, we say best practices do this every 24 hours, to look for things that we recommend that you should monitor on the host OS system, right? So if you look at assign, unassigned rules, real world example is helping a customer with this not too long ago. If I can get my sliders oriented correctly. There we go. Sorry about that. But you see, these were automatically flagged. So when I provisioned this machine and added the agent, it's saying, hey, from Trend Micro, we recommend that you monitor your host files when they're being modified. If this had rules and features installed on here, let's say if it was a DNS server, to kind of tie into that real world example, running a DNS server, okay, we're going to monitor the integrity of the file system on there, right? And those processes and file keys and files and registry keys and services to make sure, and if anytime you can look at the details, what's being monitored. And this is how we're able to help them. Their host files were getting modified at weird times of the night. They were getting new forward and reverse lookup zones. Somebody was basically messing with their DNS servers before they had Trend Micro. So we installed Trend Micro. They came to us for help, and then turned these things on. And it was like, it ended up being, it actually told you the date, the timestamp, and then the service account that's actually doing that, because it's looking at those rate of change in the logs. And we were able to pinpoint that, right? Saying, hey, this is happening, and it being a service account that was being misused, that someone had got compromised. So just a real world example there on those file integrity monitoring rules. You actually can create your own custom rule sets as well. But we provide some recommendations out of the box to help you, to be your ally. Same thing with log inspection. With log inspection, same thing is you can run that recommendation scan. And I ran a recommendation scan before we talked today, and these were automatically flagged saying, hey, we recommend that you look at your Windows event logs for specific event IDs, right? So if you go in here to that log events, looks like it's, had a little bit of lag there. There we go. So if you look at that log event under configuration, it will show you the event IDs, okay, that is monitoring. So this helps bring the needles from the bottom of the haystack to the top of the haystack. So we definitely recommend that you turn this module on from a best practice perspective, see what we recommend, and then apply those type of things, because this will help you if we say you're running MySQL on a Linux box, we've got a rule set for that, right? And it will look for things like database fatal errors and things like that. So under the configuration, so you may have somebody coming down the line to the IT wing saying, hey, is the database slow today? Well, now you're getting those needles being sent to you, right? So those are cool features with log inspection. With intrusion prevention, this is the host-based IDS IPS definitely recommend turning that on. Have it automatically recommend recommendations for you from a best practice standpoint. Run that recommendation scan on the schedule. Okay, this is going to look for application vulnerabilities and host-based vulnerabilities, and also insecure ports and protocol type stuff, right? So if we look at what's recommended to us for assignment, we see that here, right? So we ran a recommendation scan, and it's saying, hey, this is a brand new box. I love to point this out. So this is stuff we talk about bridging your patch windows, right? So you may be trying to get your criticals done in 30 days. For Microsoft, if there's a 0-day vulnerability that comes out, that's where our ZDI initiative comes in, and we produce these rule sets to protect you, to bridge the gap. And you'll see the marketing literature saying this is virtual patching. Now, a lot of administrators on the phone are probably going, oh, best practices, I don't want to install stuff without being notified. We're not installing. This is all done layer 4 at the network level. So think network IPS, IDS, and we're able to bridge the gap, plug that vulnerability. And when you do patch, the cool thing about the recommendation scan, we'll see that has been patched, and then it will automatically unmount that rule for you. So you don't have to go in and do cleanup and things like that. But cool things in here, like ports and protocol stuff is in here, like SSL version 3. That'll get detected because stuff like that's open from Microsoft and Linux distros because they don't know what you're connecting to downstream. But best practice, you want to be at TLS 1.2 for like Heartbleed or Poodle and things like that. So this is what can add value. It's my favorite module to talk about. If I was going to get anything else than anti-malware, definitely get this. This helps bridge your gaps. I pick on Microsoft a lot, but if you see it, just searchability in the catalog, Adobe, that was one that always got me. Okay, I got Patch Tuesday's done. I don't have any Adobe on here, right, for recommended for assignment. We'll go flip this to all. But you can see the catalog system here. It will refresh. And everybody's got Reader sitting on a box or Flash Player, because if you install software, you need it to look at the help desk docs and things like that. So we've got a great database for you. Lastly, to talk about today from a best practices standpoint is firewall. Firewall, you want to make sure that that is turned on. But when you do turn that on, it can take over for, make sure that you have GPOs, for your Windows Defender, if you're running that, or IP chains in Linux world. Just make sure you don't have any thing running like that to conflict with, because it's kind of, there can be only one firewall. We do have a Recon Mode option that customers don't know about. From best practices, we recommend you turn that on. This will do port scan detection for you, so lateral movement type stuff. Maybe somebody plugs into the server VLAN and they've got something on their local endpoint. They don't want it jump and ship to your servers, so you can make sure that that's not doing some kind of Nmap scan or something like that. And then as far as deployment, this is that deployment script. Lastly, before I leave you guys today, with deployment scripts, this is going to be your friend, and you're going to love it. So you can go ahead and click on Linux or Windows based on your operating system. We went through a policy today. So we're going to go ahead and select that best practices policy. And you see right down here, it builds that PowerShell right for you. So the cool thing about the PowerShell, if you select Linux, it's going to build Bash, is it takes the guesswork out of agent management. It's going to go ahead and have that proper agent automatically installed for you and that policy applied. And that's what we did on this machine that we went through the policy today. That third machine here I have in the stack. If you go right over here real quick, I was running my node on. I ran that deployment script in PowerShell prior to this call, and it automatically ran and installed my agent for me on the machine. So you can put that in your pipeline. You can put that in your infrastructure as code. You can just have a job in Active Directory. I want you to run this on all my machines. Run that deployment script. It's gonna improve your world for sure. And you can see everything is turned on and configured from your Deep Security Manager. That's all I had to cover today for I know we're coming right at 1 o'clock, so I know we covered a lot today. I know we probably have some questions in chat. I'm going to go ahead and take a look at that real quick, but I think we're right at time. So let's go ahead and stop sharing here. Take a look here. Q&A. Guys, do we have anybody for live questions? Let's see. Yeah, we've got a few that came in. There's one customer had come in and said, hey, we've got a fleet of virtual desktops running on servers that are non-persistent. Do you have documentation or a best practices guide to how that should be configured? That best practices guide that we have linked for you guys that I was actually referencing for deployment today is going to exactly tell you how to do that from a VMware perspective. But yes, that is supported. One other one we had was a performance hit. Hey, is there a performance hit? Using agent or deploying agentlessly. Management's concerned about high CPU. No, totally relevant. When you run agentlessly, yes, that's going to be your most, because you're not installing an agent on the machine. So if you have the means, you have NSX, you have all those components, that might be an option for you for your business. A lot of times where customers decide to go agent is maybe they don't have NSX because it can be expensive to license that on your host and don't have all those requirements. But with the agent, as long as the system requirements are met to allocate for the modules that you want turned on and turned off accordingly, there's been a lot of work on that agent to make it as lightweight as possible by breaking up those modules as features to turn off and on for performance. And you can also work with us for best practices, POC. That's the purpose of like setting it up, trialing it out, and making sure that it's working okay. Our customer success team can help there. We're moving within cloud in the next year. Should I install locally? Or we're planning to move to AWS? What are my options? So like I was saying before earlier in the call, we do have customers that install directly in AWS, directly in Azure, directly in GCP, because they want total control of that infrastructure. And if you are moving total cloud, you may want to look at some SaaS offerings, and if that's something as you have a total initiative, or like a lot of times you talk to customers, they're full on in AWS or full on in Azure. They want to run everything in a SaaS model. That's where Cloud One workload security comes into play there. So these were all excellent questions. I know we went about 2 minutes over there. I really appreciate everybody attending the call today, and I hope this was beneficial to help you make some decisions on whether you're ready to deploy, or if you already are deploying but just had some questions on how to get started. Hopefully this was beneficial, and thank you very much. Have a good day.